This story is titled, My Fiancé Kept Pushing for Open Relationship, saying it would be easy for me to spend time with my girls. But when I agreed, she realized it was a mistake since I have a different woman every day while other men don't want her. Hey Reddit, I'm a 29-year-old guy, and I never thought I'd be posting something like this. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Kind of like how my wife dropped the bomb that we were now in an open marriage over appetizers at our birthday dinner 8 months ago. I'm only now able to talk about this whole situation without my eye twitching uncontrollably. So settle in, because this story is longer than the awkward pause that followed her announcement. Let me start from the beginning. I'm 29, been married to my wife, I'll call her Luna, for about 7 years now. She's 28 and we're both in our late 20s with no kids, decent careers, and a shared condo. Pretty normal suburban life stuff, you know? For the most part, things had been steady between us. Not perfect by any means, but we made it work, and I thought we were building something solid together. Luna and I originally met back in college during our junior year. We hit it off immediately, started dating seriously, and got married right after graduation. We settled into what I thought was the typical American dream, minus the white picket fence, but you get the idea. Both of us were focused on getting our careers off the ground, and for the first few years, everything felt great. We genuinely enjoyed each other's company back then. We'd binge watch the same shows on Netflix, go biking together on weekends, and just do all those couple things that make you feel like you're part of a team. I thought we had found that sweet spot where we were both independent, but also really connected as partners. Looking back now, those early years were probably the best our relationship ever was. But somewhere around year 5 of our marriage, things started getting stale. And I don't mean the normal marriage takes work kind of stale that everyone warns you about when you're getting married. This felt different, like something fundamental had shifted between us, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. Luna started coming home later and later from work, and at first I didn't think much of it. We both had demanding jobs, and sometimes you've got to put in those extra hours to keep the boss happy, right? I figured it was just a busy season at her office, and things would eventually get back to normal. But then I started noticing a pattern that made me uncomfortable. She'd walk through the front door, barely look in my direction, and head straight for the shower upstairs. No kiss hello, no how was your day, just absolutely nothing. I'd be sitting there like an idiot with dinner I'd spent time making, watching it get cold on the table while I waited for her to come back downstairs. Instead, I'd end up eating alone and watching Netflix by myself, while she spent over an hour decompressing in our bedroom. When she finally did come down, she'd grab a plate, microwave whatever I'd cooked, and eat while scrolling through her phone. Half the time, she wouldn't even sit at the table with me. She'd just stand in the kitchen, shoving food in her mouth while staring at whatever was apparently so fascinating on Instagram. I'd try to engage with her, asking simple questions like rough day, and she'd just mumble, without even looking up from her screen. It was like I had become completely invisible in my own home. I started feeling like I could walk around naked, covered in purple paint, and she wouldn't even notice I was there. I tried everything I could think of to reconnect with her and bring back some warmth to our relationship. I started cooking her favorite meals, hoping that might spark some appreciation, or at least get her to sit down and eat with me. I suggested date nights, thinking maybe we just needed to get out of the house and remember why we fell for each other in the first place. I even started buying her random little gifts. Nothing expensive, just things I thought might make her smile again. Nothing worked. She'd just nod politely, say thanks in this flat, emotionless voice, and go right back to whatever she was doing on her phone or laptop. It was like she was physically present, but emotionally checked out completely. I felt like I was trying to have a relationship with a ghost. I attempted to talk to her about what was happening between us a few times, hoping maybe she'd open up about whatever was going on. Hey Luna, is everything okay with us? I'd ask, genuinely concerned that I'd done something wrong, or that there was some issue I wasn't seeing. Yeah, why? She'd respond, looking at me like I was crazy for even asking. I don't know, you just seem really distant lately, like we're not connecting the way we used to. She'd get this annoyed expression on her face, like I was creating problems out of thin air and being unnecessarily dramatic. I'm just tired from work, she'd say dismissively. Not everything has to be turned into some big dramatic thing, you know? And I'd drop it every time because what else could I do? I wasn't going to force her to be present with me or demand that she tell me what was going on in her head. I'm not her jailer, and I didn't want to become some nagging husband who couldn't take a hint. So I'd back off and give her space, hoping things would eventually improve on their own. Then about 8 months ago, things started getting even weirder than they already were. Luna suddenly got super into all these self-help podcasts and personal development stuff. She started journaling constantly, talking about growth work, and going to therapy sessions that she never really explained to me. At first, I was actually cool with it and even encouraged her to pursue whatever was helping her feel better. I figured maybe she was working through whatever internal stuff had been making her so checked out lately. If therapy and self-reflection were going to bring back the woman I married, I was all for it. I thought this might be the turning point where she'd start engaging with me again and we could get our relationship back on track. But instead of bringing us closer together, all this personal development work seemed to make her pull away from me even more. Not just physically, but emotionally too. She stopped checking in with me completely about anything. Her day, her feelings, her plans, nothing. She stopped initiating any kind of conversation or interaction. It was like she decided I wasn't part of her journey anymore. Our condo became this weird, tense, neutral zone where we just coexisted without actually connecting on any meaningful level. I'd come home from work completely exhausted, wanting nothing more than to vent about my terrible boss or laugh about some ridiculous thing that happened at the office with my coworkers. But Luna would be sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with her journal spread out in front of her, earbuds in, completely absorbed in her own world. If I tried to talk to her or get her attention, she'd hold up one finger like, "Not now, I'm busy," and keep writing in that damn journal. By the time she was finally ready to engage with another human being, I'd already given up trying and gone to bed, frustrated and lonely. This became our new normal, and I started dreading coming home to my own house. I started stopping at the bar with my coworkers more often, just to put off walking into that cold, empty condo. Even though Luna was physically there most of the time, the place felt completely abandoned somehow. There was no warmth, no life, no sense that two people who supposedly loved each other actually lived there together. Whenever I'd bring up how distant things had become between us, she'd just brush me off with vague explanations about how she was working through things internally. Whatever the hell that was supposed to mean. I gave her all the space she seemed to want. I was patient, and I didn't push her too hard about what was going on. Maybe I should have been more persistent, but I didn't want to be that controlling husband who couldn't respect his wife's need for personal growth. I remember one night in particular when I came home from a particularly awful day at work. All I wanted was to chill out and have someone to talk to about the ridiculous drama that had unfolded in the office. The condo was dark again, except for the familiar glow of Luna's laptop screen coming from our bedroom upstairs. I found her typing away intensely, earbuds firmly planted in her ears, completely oblivious to my presence. I stood in the doorway for a full minute, just watching her, waiting for her to notice that I'd come home. She didn't even glance up. "Oh, hey," she finally said when she happened to look in my direction. "I didn't hear you come in." "I've been home for 25 minutes, I replied, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. "I was downstairs in the kitchen." "Oh," she said, glancing back at her laptop screen like it was more interesting than her husband who'd just gotten home from work. "Did you eat?" "I grabbed something with Jessica after work," I told her. Jessica was this new work friend of mine. We'd started hanging out occasionally when I needed someone to vent to about life. I remembered meeting Jessica at Luna's office holiday party the year before. She was this tall brunette with fake boobs who was kind of loud and always seemed to be touching people when she talked. She'd given me weird vibes back then. But now she was one of the few people who actually seemed interested in having real conversations. Luna just nodded and went back to whatever she was doing on her computer. I walked away feeling that familiar hollow ache in my chest, knowing that once again I'd be spending the evening alone. I'd eat alone, watch TV alone, and eventually sleep alone, despite sharing a bed with my supposedly loving wife. Then came our birthday. We share the same birth month, which used to be something special we celebrated together. Neither of us had planned anything special this time around, which was pretty telling about where our relationship was at that point. We were just sitting on the couch with takeout containers scattered across the coffee table, some random Netflix show playing that neither of us was actually watching. I was mindlessly scrolling through my phone when Luna suddenly grabbed the remote and muted the TV. "We need to talk about us," she said, turning to face me with this weird, serious expression I hadn't seen before. I put my phone down, leaned back against the couch cushions, and just waited. Whenever someone starts a conversation with those exact words, you know that whatever's coming next isn't going to be good news. But I wasn't about to show any reaction until I heard what she had to say. After 7 years of marriage, I still couldn't read her mind. But the way she was fidgeting with her wedding ring told me this conversation wasn't going to be about vacation plans or what we wanted for dinner tomorrow night. I want an open marriage, she said, just like that. I stared at her for a few seconds, thinking this had to be some kind of joke. It wasn't. Monogamy feels unnatural to me, she continued, speaking in this calm, matter-of-fact tone, like she was explaining why she decided to switch coffee brands. I've been thinking about this for a while now, and I think it would be good for both of us. Are you serious right now? I asked, still trying to process what I just heard. I still love you, she said, reaching for my hand, but I instinctively pulled back. This isn't about replacing what we have together. It's about exploring new connections and experiences that could actually enhance our relationship. So you want permission to cheat, I said flatly. It's not cheating if we both agree to it, she replied, using that patient voice people use when they're explaining something to a child who doesn't understand. It's called ethical non-monogamy. There's a whole community of people who live this way. I kept my face as neutral as possible, but my mind was racing, connecting dots that I probably should have connected months ago. The late nights at work, the emotional distance, the password on her phone that definitely wasn't there before. This wasn't some random philosophical idea that had just occurred to her. She already had someone lined up, maybe had already started something. I was just being asked to retroactively approve whatever had already begun. So I decided to test my theory and see how she'd react. So let me get this straight, I said with a casual shrug, like we were discussing what to watch on Netflix. You're saying it's totally cool if I go out and hook up with other women too, then? She did this little laugh, not nervous, but like I was being completely ridiculous for even suggesting such a thing. Don't be so dramatic, she said, rolling her eyes like I just told her I wanted to become an astronaut. Besides, it's not like you'll have girls lining up for you anyway. You haven't exactly been fighting them off all these years. That comment hit me like a punch to the gut, and that's when I knew our marriage was already completely dead. She didn't just want permission to sleep with other guys. She wanted to make absolutely sure I understood that she thought I couldn't do the same thing even if I tried. She wanted her freedom while keeping me as her safe, reliable backup plan. I've got to admit, that shit cut deeper than anything else she could have said. We'd been together since college, and I hadn't needed to fight off other women because I was completely committed to her. I'd never given her any reason to doubt my loyalty or dedication to our relationship. And now she was throwing it in my face like I was some pathetic loser who should be grateful that anyone wanted me at all. But this wasn't the Luna I married. This wasn't even close to the woman I'd fallen in love with. She used to talk shit about her friends who cheated on their boyfriends, calling them selfish and immature. Now, she was sitting there telling me how limiting and outdated monogamy was, while simultaneously taking shots at my desirability as a man. Something definitely wasn't adding up. After some pushing and prodding, she finally mentioned that her coworker, Jessica, had been opening her eyes to new relationship styles over the past several months. Apparently, Jessica and her husband had this amazing open marriage and were living their best lives, traveling the world and having incredible experiences with multiple partners. Luna made it sound like there were some kind of relationship goals that we should aspire to. I told her straight up that I wasn't comfortable with the idea at all. But the way she'd framed the entire conversation wasn't really like she was asking for my permission or input. It felt more like she was informing me about this cool new, evolved relationship model that we were going to try, whether I liked it or not. Honestly, I was just exhausted at that point. I was tired of being the only one putting any effort into fixing our problems. I was tired of feeling like everything was somehow my responsibility to handle. I was tired of walking on eggshells around someone who clearly didn't want to be with me anymore, but was too much of a coward to just say so. So I said fine. Not because I wanted an open marriage, but because I was already mentally checked out of our relationship and didn't have the energy to fight about it anymore. In my head, I was already thinking seriously about divorce for the first time. Like, who the hell asks their husband if they can sleep with other people, insults his attractiveness in the same conversation, and expects the marriage to survive that kind of betrayal? But I didn't say any of that out loud. Instead, I just set some ground rules that I figured would at least protect whatever was left of my sanity. No emotional attachments with anyone else. This was supposed to be purely physical. Complete honesty about everything that happened with other people. Safety first, which meant protection and regular testing. And most importantly, we'd revisit the whole arrangement if either one of us started developing serious feelings for someone else. She agreed to all of it without hesitation, nodding along like these were perfectly reasonable terms for what she was proposing. Of course, looking back now, I realized she would have agreed to pretty much anything I said just to get the green light for what she'd probably already been doing behind my back. Luna jumped right into her new lifestyle with both feet. I think it was literally the same weekend after we had that conversation that she had her first 2 hookups back to back. She came home that Sunday evening looking like she'd just discovered the meaning of life or figured out some cosmic secret that had been eluding her for years. She told me about her experiences in these deliberately vague terms, saying how liberated and alive the whole thing made her feel. She was genuinely proud of herself, like she'd accomplished something meaningful instead of just sleeping with random strangers she'd met on dating apps. The sheer audacity of her sitting there, glowing with satisfaction while describing how amazing it felt to cheat on me with permission, was almost impressive in its complete lack of self-awareness. I just nodded along and pretended to be interested in all the details she was sharing. What else was I supposed to do? Make a scene? Get angry and start a fight? The marriage was clearly over and had been for a long time. This was just the final confirmation I needed that there was absolutely nothing left to salvage between us. While she was talking about her amazing new experiences and how much personal growth she was achieving through casual sex, I was mentally calculating how to divide our assets and wondering if my buddy Mike's couch would be available for a few weeks while I found my own place. I didn't say any of that, though. I just smiled and made appropriate noises at the right moments, playing the part of the supportive husband who was totally on board with this arrangement. I figured I'd stick around for a little while longer, get my ducks in a row financially and logistically, and maybe see what this whole open marriage thing was actually about from my end. Not because I wanted to win some kind of competition or prove a point, but because why rush out the door unprepared when I could take my time and make smart decisions about my future? She had her plans for exploring her sexuality and finding herself or whatever, and I had mine. She just didn't know that my plans involved signing divorce papers and getting separate addresses in the not-too-distant future. But I wasn't interested in just hooking up with random women for the sake of it. That wasn't my style, and it wasn't what I needed at that point in my life. Instead, I decided to focus on myself and the things I'd been neglecting while trying to save a marriage that was already dead. I started hitting the gym again after months of making excuses about being too tired or too busy. I got back into rock climbing, which I used to absolutely love before I got married, but had somehow abandoned over the years. I updated my wardrobe with clothes that actually fit properly and made me feel confident. I got a fresh haircut from a barber who knew what he was doing instead of just going to whatever cheap place was convenient. Most importantly, I started going out more and socializing like I used to do when I was single. Not necessarily looking for hookups or dates, just basic self-improvement stuff that made me feel like a human being again, instead of a ghost haunting his own life. The first night I came home from the gym, sweaty and actually feeling good about myself for the first time in months, Luna was in the kitchen making one of her health smoothies. "You're going to the gym now?" she asked, sounding genuinely surprised that I was doing something for myself. "Yeah, thought I'd get back into it," I replied, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. She looked me up and down with this weird expression on her face. Not hostile exactly, but not appreciative either. More like she was calculating something in her head that I couldn't quite figure out. "Huh," was all she said before going back to her blender. I spent the rest of that evening going out with my friends, something I hadn't done in way too long. The next morning, I got up early to hit the gym before work, making it part of my routine. Luna was still in bed with her phone in hand as usual when I was getting ready to leave. "Going to the gym again?" she asked, watching me put on my workout clothes. "Yep, trying to make it a habit," I replied. She frowned slightly, like this was somehow inconvenient for her. "You're never around anymore." I almost laughed out loud at the irony of that statement. For months, she'd barely acknowledged my existence, treating me like furniture in my own home. She'd come home late, ignore me during dinner, spend hours locked away with her journal and podcasts, and generally act like I was an annoying roommate rather than her husband. And now she was complaining about me not being around? I just shrugged and headed out the door. "See you tonight," I called over my shoulder, letting her get a taste of her own medicine for once. What surprised me most over the next few weeks wasn't necessarily the attention I started getting from other women. What really caught me off guard was how quickly I stopped caring about Luna's opinion of me, or seeking her approval for everything I did. Each day I spent focusing on myself, working out, reconnecting with old hobbies I'd abandoned, hanging out with friends who actually wanted to spend time with me, felt like peeling off a layer of that needy, approval-seeking guy I'd somehow become during our marriage. I wasn't doing any of this to make her jealous or to prove something to her about how attractive I could be. I was doing it because for the first time in years, I remembered what it felt like to actually like myself and enjoy my own company. I'd forgotten how good it felt to have goals and interests that had nothing to do with trying to fix my broken relationship. The more I got out of the house and started socializing and enjoying myself, the more people began to notice me. Women at the gym would start casual conversations about workout routines or ask for spotting help. An old college friend reached out to me on Instagram after seeing some photos I'd posted from a rock climbing trip. Even the barista at my regular coffee shop started remembering my order and making small talk about my day. To my genuine surprise, my phone started blowing up with notifications. At first, it was just a few DMs on Instagram from women I kind of knew. Old classmates, friends of friends, people I'd met at parties years ago but hadn't talked to since. Then it started snowballing into something I definitely wasn't expecting. Someone must have mentioned to someone else that I was apparently available now, because suddenly I was getting messages from women I'd never even met before. "Hey, heard you might be looking for some company," one message read. "Your profile came up on my feed and I had to say hi," said another. "Are you really in an open relationship now? Asking for a friend LOL," came from a third. At first, I thought this had to be some kind of elaborate prank that Luna was pulling to test me or mess with my head. But these were definitely real women, attractive ones by the way, who were genuinely shooting their shot with me. I even got a couple of straightforward offers for hookups with zero strings attached, which was completely surreal given that I hadn't actively pursued anyone. My phone would ding with notifications constantly throughout the day. It was like I'd suddenly become visible to an entire segment of the population that hadn't noticed me before. Or maybe they had noticed, but hadn't felt like they could approach me when I was clearly in a committed relationship. I didn't go crazy with all the attention, though. I wasn't looking to become some kind of player or rack up a high body count just to prove a point. I just started saying yes to more social invitations and being open to whatever developed naturally from genuine connections. That's how I ended up meeting a woman named Ivy. She's a graphic designer I met at this art exhibit downtown that my buddy had dragged me to on a Saturday afternoon. We started talking about these weird, abstract paintings that neither of us really understood, but we were both making fun of them in similar ways. We exchanged numbers and went for coffee a few days later. It wasn't like some movie scene with fireworks and instant chemistry or any of that dramatic nonsense. It was just easy and comfortable and fun. She actually listened when I talked instead of scrolling through her phone. She was creative and interesting and had her own life and passions that had nothing to do with me. Most importantly, she made me feel like I didn't have to try so hard to be worthy of someone's attention. The first time I went out to dinner with Ivy, Luna actually noticed, I was getting ready to leave, checking myself in the mirror and making sure I looked decent when she appeared in the doorway of our bedroom. "You're going out somewhere?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe with her arms crossed. "Yeah, just grabbing dinner with someone I met at that art exhibit last weekend," I replied casually. Her eyebrows shot up like this was somehow shocking news. "Like a date?" "I mean, yeah," I said, adjusting my collar in the hallway mirror. "That's kind of how this works, right?" She just nodded, but I could see something shift in her expression. It was like she'd suddenly realized that there might actually be consequences to her brilliant idea. And maybe she hadn't thought this whole thing through as carefully as she'd assumed. Ivy and I started seeing each other once or twice a week after that. It wasn't some big secret or dramatic affair. We were both completely clear about our situations from the beginning. Even though it wasn't super serious or heading towards some life-changing relationship, she was probably the only person I felt like myself around in months. There was no pressure, no games, no walking on eggshells. Just two adults enjoying each other's company. Around the same time, Luna started noticing how often my phone was going off throughout the day. At first, she didn't say anything directly, but I'd catch her glancing over whenever my phone would light up with notifications. It was subtle at first, just quick looks when she thought I wasn't paying attention. One morning, I was making breakfast in the kitchen when my phone buzzed 5 times in a row. Just normal messages from friends, some work stuff, and a text from Ivy asking about weekend plans. I saw Luna eyeing my phone from across the kitchen where she was drinking her coffee, but she just sipped in silence. The look on her face was absolutely priceless, though. This mix of confusion and something else I couldn't quite identify. Maybe disbelief that her supposedly undesirable husband was suddenly popular. Then one evening, I was chilling on the couch, scrolling through Instagram when a new DM popped up from this woman I'd met at the rock climbing gym. She was just asking if I wanted to join a group climb that weekend. Nothing romantic, just a friendly invitation to do something I enjoyed. Luna happened to walk by right as I was typing back a response. and I noticed her slow down and hover just a bit too long, trying to see what I was doing. Popular these days, huh? She finally said, trying to sound casual, but there was definitely an edge to her voice that hadn't been there before. I just shrugged without looking up from my phone. Just climbing stuff. Seems like your phone's been blowing up a lot lately, she continued, and I could tell she was fishing for information while trying to act like she didn't really care. Yeah, I guess so, I replied, not offering any additional details or explanations. Over the next few weeks, I noticed her watching me more and more intently. When I'd get a text message and smile at something funny, she'd suddenly need something from whatever room I was in. If I stepped away to take a phone call, she'd be right there when I got back, pretending to be busy with something else but clearly trying to eavesdrop. She never directly asked who I was talking to or what was going on, but I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. The woman who'd been so confident that I wouldn't have any options, who'd literally laughed at the idea of me getting attention from other women, was slowly realizing that she'd miscalculated the situation pretty badly. One night, I was getting ready to head out for another dinner with Ivy when Luna appeared in the doorway of our bedroom again, watching me get dressed. Going somewhere? She asked, even though she obviously knew the answer. Yeah, meeting up with Ivy again, I said, not bothering to hide anything. Ivy, she repeated, like she was testing how the name sounded. That's the third woman this month. I looked up from tying my shoes, genuinely confused by her math. Second, actually, why are you keeping track? No reason, she said quickly, but then added, just keeping tabs, I guess. I couldn't resist the opportunity to point out the obvious contradiction. I thought we weren't supposed to be keeping tabs on each other's social lives. Isn't that part of this whole evolved relationship model of yours? She flinched slightly at that. Right, of course, she said, trying to recover. I'm just surprised, that's all. Surprised about what exactly? That you're, seeing so many different people. I had to bite back a laugh at the absurdity of her being surprised by the exact thing she'd suggested we both do. You know what? Turns out the open marriage thing wasn't such a bad idea after all. Her face hardened instantly. That fake casual smile vanished faster than free beer at a college party. Her eyes narrowed into slits, and I swear I could actually hear her teeth grinding together. Yeah, great idea, she spat out sarcastically. Enjoy your dinner. Then things got messy faster than I expected. Luna was still seeing some guy she'd met on a dating app, and I was hanging out with Ivy regularly. Nothing too intense on my end, just casual and comfortable. We'd grab food, hang out at her place or mine, and actually have real conversations about things that mattered to both of us. But man, it felt incredible just to experience that kind of normalcy again. Not just getting attention from someone, but being able to connect with another person without feeling like I was stuck in some emotional dead zone. I didn't have to constantly wonder if I was bothering someone or if they wished I would just disappear. With Ivy, I could actually be myself without walking on eggshells. Meanwhile, Luna's hot girl summer started tanking harder than I expected. The guy she'd been seeing from the app suddenly ghosted her completely. Just stopped replying to her messages after one weekend they'd spent together. She pretended not to care about it, but she kept bringing it up in random conversations, trying to make sense of what had happened. It's just weird because we had such a good connection, she'd say, fishing for some kind of validation or explanation. And I'd just nod and sip my coffee, not offering any commentary or advice. Not going to lie, it felt like watching karma work in real time. Then I started seeing someone else briefly, just a woman from my climbing gym who was fun to hang out with. We went on a few hikes together, and it turned into a casual weekend thing for a while. We both knew exactly what it was. No games, no drama, just mutual respect and enjoyment of each other's company. When it ran its course naturally, we moved on without any hard feelings. Luna didn't even notice this transition at first because she was still stuck in this weird headspace where she assumed I was still completely obsessed with her and her opinion of me. But then, she started getting really quiet and asking these probing little questions like, "Are you seeing Ivy again tonight?" Or, "Did you tell her about our situation?" It wasn't because she cared about my safety or emotional well-being. She was just trying to figure out how far I was drifting away from her orbit and whether I was still going to be available as her reliable backup plan when her own adventures didn't work out. One night, I came home from dinner with Ivy, and Luna was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed, clearly waiting for me. The moment I walked through the door, she launched into this accusation about how I was emotionally cheating and needed to focus on our marriage if I still wanted to fix it. Emotionally cheating? I just looked at her and said, "You wanted freedom, so I took mine too." She did not like that response at all. She got pissed and started listing off all the things I was supposedly doing wrong. Apparently, texting Ivy on a daily basis was disrespectful to our marriage. Going out to dinner with her was crossing some invisible line that Luna had never bothered to mention before. And continuing to see someone that she didn't approve of made her feel unsafe in our relationship. I didn't yell or get defensive. I just calmly reminded her that she'd gone out and slept with someone else within the first weekend of this new arrangement. She didn't ask for my permission or give me time to process what was happening. She just did it and came home grinning like she'd won the lottery. "That's different," she insisted, getting more agitated. "Those were just hookups. You're getting emotionally involved with these women." "You never said that was against the rules," I pointed out. "You just said no serious attachments. I'm not planning to marry any of these people." "Well, I'm clarifying the rules now," she snapped back. "No, you're changing them because you don't like how this is playing out," I corrected her. The truth was becoming crystal clear. Now that her side of things wasn't going well and she was getting ghosted by random guys while I was apparently thriving, I was supposed to what? Drop everything that was working for me just to protect her ego? She tried flipping the script again, saying she didn't realize how serious things could get if we both actually followed through with the open marriage idea. She claimed she thought it would just be casual hookups and nothing more. The craziest part was that she remained completely unapologetic about the whole situation, like she was entitled to change the terms of our arrangement whenever it suited her, and I was just supposed to go along with whatever new rules she invented. She never once admitted that maybe, just maybe, suggesting an open marriage in the first place had been a terrible mistake. Instead, she acted like I was the one who had somehow twisted her pure, evolved relationship model into something dirty and inappropriate. At that point, I felt completely bored with the whole game. Watching Luna try to change the rules when they no longer benefited her didn't make me angry anymore. It just clarified everything I needed to know about our relationship. This wasn't a partnership between two equals. This was a one-sided arrangement where her needs and desires always came first, and I was expected to adapt to whatever she decided was best for her at any given moment. So I called a lawyer and started the divorce process. No drama, no big confrontation scene, no attempt to hurt her or get revenge. I was just completely done with the whole charade. Honestly, it felt like checking out of a really shitty hotel after a stay that had gone on way too long. The game had been mildly entertaining for a minute. Seeing her squirm when she realized I actually had options and wasn't going to sit around waiting for her scraps of attention. But the novelty wore off pretty quickly. Why keep pretending we had a marriage worth saving when we both knew this thing was completely toast? It was time to move on and stop wasting each other's time. During this period when I was getting my legal ducks in a row, I got a DM on Instagram that completely blindsided me. It was from none other than Jessica, Luna's coworker, the one who supposedly had this amazing open marriage and had filled my wife's head with all these progressive relationship ideas. "Hey, I hope this isn't weird, but I've been meaning to reach out," the message read. "Luna talks about you all the time at work, and I was wondering if you'd want to grab coffee sometime. No pressure, just thought it might be nice to actually meet properly." I stared at that message for a solid 15 minutes, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Was this some kind of trap? Was Luna testing me to see if I'd try to hook up with her friend? But honestly, at this point, I didn't really give a shit anymore about Luna's games or manipulations. The divorce papers were already being processed, and I figured I might as well hear what Jessica had to say. This was the woman who had supposedly blown up my marriage with her enlightened relationship advice. I might as well meet her face to face and get the full story before I closed this chapter of my life completely and moved on to whatever came next. We met at this little cafe downtown the following weekend. When Jessica walked in, I recognized her immediately from Luna's office holiday party, but she looked different somehow. More put together, less loud and attention-seeking than I remembered. She seemed almost nervous as she sat down across from me. "So I'm guessing you're wondering why I wanted to meet," she said, cutting straight to the point. I nodded, curious to hear what she had to say. "Yeah, I have to admit I'm a little confused about this whole situation." That's when she dropped a bomb that completely changed my understanding of everything that had happened. "I need to clear something up," she said, looking directly at me. "My husband and I don't have an open marriage. We never have. I honestly don't know why Luna would tell you that we do." I nearly spit out my coffee. "Wait, what? Luna specifically said you were the one who convinced her to try an open marriage because you and your husband were doing it and absolutely loving it." Jessica looked genuinely confused and a little concerned. "That's just not true at all. God, I really hope Tom doesn't hear about this rumor floating around. We're about as monogamous as they come. We've been happily married for 6 years and have never even discussed the possibility of opening our relationship. Then why the hell would Luna say that? I asked, feeling like I'd just discovered that everything I thought I knew was a lie. Jessica shrugged, looking uncomfortable. Honestly, I think she's been trying to impress this new manager at work. He's this young tech bro type who's always talking about his progressive relationship style and how traditional monogamy is outdated. Luna's been kissing his ass since he started working there a few months ago. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this information. So Luna had completely lied about where she got the idea for an open marriage. Had she been feeding me bullshit this entire time? Was anything she'd told me about her motivations actually true? As we continued talking, Jessica revealed that she'd been worried about Luna's behavior at work for months. She said Luna had been acting increasingly weird, flirting inappropriately with male coworkers and going out for suspiciously long lunches with the new manager. Then she dropped another bomb that made my stomach drop. Luna's been bringing one of her hookups to office happy hours, Jessica said quietly. She introduces him as just a friend, but she's super handsy with him in front of everyone. It's honestly pretty embarrassing to watch. Everyone at work knows she's married, so it's creating this really uncomfortable situation for all of us. It's honestly really embarrassing to watch, Jessica continued. Everyone at the office knows she's married, so it creates this incredibly uncomfortable situation for all of us who have to witness it. I just thought you should know what's actually been going on. By the end of that coffee meeting, I had a completely new perspective on everything that had happened over the past 8 months. I thanked Jessica for her honesty and for having the courage to tell me the truth when she didn't have to get involved in this mess at all. And yeah, I noticed that Jessica was attractive and seemed like a genuinely decent person, but I wasn't about to go down that road. That would be way too messy and complicated, even for this absolute disaster of a situation I was already dealing with. But before we left the cafe, she hesitated for a moment, then asked if I'd want to get dinner sometime. She said she'd always thought I seemed like a nice, grounded guy, especially compared to some of the other men Luna talked about at work. I surprised myself by saying yes, though I made it clear that I was in the middle of divorce proceedings and wasn't looking for anything serious. Driving home, my head was completely spinning with everything I'd learned. Part of me wondered if Jessica was telling the truth, or if she was just making this stuff up to drive a wedge between me and Luna for her own reasons. What if she had her own agenda that I wasn't seeing? But then again, why would Luna lie about Jessica's marriage being open? What would be the point of that deception? Nothing about this situation made sense anymore, and I wasn't sure who to believe or what was actually real. But I guess someone saw us together at the cafe and told Luna about it. Because when I got home that night, all hell broke loose. She was waiting for me in the living room, eyes red from crying, clearly having worked herself up into a complete frenzy. "You went out with Jessica?" she screamed at me the moment I walked through the door. "My friend from my work? Are you fucking kidding me right now?" I just stood there calmly, letting her yell and get it all out of her system. When she finally ran out of steam and stopped shouting, I told her everything I'd learned during my conversation with Jessica. That Jessica and her husband didn't actually have an open marriage and never had. That Luna had been showing off one of her hookups at work events, making everyone uncomfortable. That she'd probably gotten the whole open marriage idea from her new manager, not from her supposedly liberated friend. Luna went completely pale when I laid out all these facts. Then she switched tactics entirely, like someone had flipped a switch in her brain. Suddenly she was crying and saying she'd made a huge mistake. She claimed she'd been confused and influenced by people at work who didn't have her best interests at heart. She said she realized now how much she loved me and only me, and that she wanted to close the marriage again and go back to being monogamous. Maybe we could even try couples therapy to work through all of this. "I was just experimenting," she sobbed dramatically. "I didn't think you'd actually go along with it and start seeing other women seriously. So you thought what? That I'd just sit at home waiting while you explored your options?" I asked. "I didn't think you'd actually get dates," she blurted out, then immediately looked like she regretted saying it out loud. "I mean, I just never thought you'd be so into the whole thing." And there it was. The ugly truth finally coming out. She'd never expected me to get attention from other women. She'd set up this whole open marriage arrangement, expecting to be the only one who benefited from it, while I waited around like some pathetic backup plan for when she was done exploring her options and decided to settle back down. "You know what the funniest part is?" I said, keeping my voice completely calm. I never even tried that hard. I didn't go on dating apps begging for matches. I didn't hit up old ex-girlfriends or post thirsty photos on social media. I just started working on myself and being the kind of person I actually wanted to be, and women noticed. Meanwhile, you're out there actively searching and putting yourself out there, and you're still getting ghosted by random guys. That comment hit a nerve. She went from tears to pure rage in about 2 seconds flat. "So what? You think you're so great now?" she snarled. "You weren't complaining about me being the only woman who would look at you for 7 years." "No, I wasn't complaining because I was committed to you," I replied. "I didn't want other women looking at me because I was happy with what we had. But you changed the rules, remember? You decided our marriage wasn't enough for you. Don't be mad that I turned out to be better at the game you started." She stormed out after that exchange, slamming the front door so hard that a framed picture fell off the wall and shattered on the floor. I just sat on the couch, staring at the broken glass, feeling this weird mix of anger and relief washing over me. Like finally, the truth was completely out in the open, and there was no more pretending. She'd never expected me to thrive without her constant approval and attention. She'd expected me to fail miserably at dating, to prove once and for all that she was the best I could ever hope to get, and that I needed her way more than she needed me. But that's not what happened, and now she couldn't handle the reality of the situation she'd created. The next day, I found out that Luna had confronted Jessica at work and caused this huge, dramatic scene in the office break room. She'd called Jessica a backstabbing bitch and accused her of trying to steal her husband. According to the text Jessica sent me about it, Luna had basically had a complete meltdown in front of their coworkers, screaming about how everyone was conspiring against her. I felt genuinely bad that Jessica had been dragged into our marital disaster when all she'd done was try to tell me the truth about what was really going on. But I also knew that Luna's public breakdown at work was the final straw for me. Any tiny part of me that might have considered trying to work things out was completely gone after that display. That night, I handed Luna the divorce papers that I'd had drawn up several weeks earlier. The look on her face when she realized that I'd been planning this for a while, that I hadn't just spontaneously decided to end our marriage after the Jessica incident, was something I'll never forget. It was like watching someone realize that they'd been playing checkers while their opponent was playing chess the entire time. "Marriage isn't a game," I told her as she stared at the legal documents. "You don't get to change the rules whenever it suits you, then change them back when it doesn't work out the way you planned. I'm done." She went into full panic mode immediately, crying, begging, promising to change everything about herself if I'd just give her another chance. She said she'd quit her job to get away from the toxic influences there, delete all her dating apps, go to individual therapy, basically anything I wanted her to do. But it was way too late for any of that. I'd mentally checked out of our marriage the exact moment she suggested opening it, and then laughed about how no one would want me anyway. I just hadn't fully admitted it to myself until this point. "You can't do this," she said desperately. "I made one mistake." "No, you made a series of deliberate choices," I corrected her. "You chose to pull away from me emotionally for months. You chose to suggest an open marriage without considering how it would affect me. You chose to lie about where you got the idea. You chose to hook up with other guys immediately without giving me any time to process what was happening. And you chose to make me feel like I should be grateful that anyone wanted me at all. Those weren't mistakes or accidents. They were deliberate decisions that showed me exactly how little you actually respected me or our marriage." She had no real response to that. Just more tears and more accusations about how I was being unfair and cruel. But she never once, not even during this final conversation, actually apologized for what she'd done or acknowledged that her actions had consequences. The next few weeks were absolutely hellish. Luna alternated between begging me to reconsider the divorce and threatening to destroy my reputation if I went through with it. She called my parents and told them I'd been cheating on her with multiple women, conveniently leaving out the entire part about the open marriage being her idea in the first place. She tried to turn our mutual friends against me, telling them that I'd changed into some kind of heartless player who was abandoning his devoted wife for no good reason. She painted herself as the victim of my sudden personality transformation, like I'd just woken up one day and decided to become a different person. But I had receipts for everything. Text messages where she'd laid out the whole open marriage proposal, screenshots of her dating app profiles that she'd shown me proudly, the entire conversation where she'd literally laughed at the idea of me getting attention from other women. Once people saw the actual evidence of what had really happened, the narrative shifted pretty quickly in my favor. What really sealed the deal, though, was when her manager from work actually had the audacity to text me directly. He said he thought I was being closed-minded and punishing Luna for her sexual liberation. According to him, if I was a real man, I'd be secure enough to let my wife explore her desires without feeling threatened by it. I didn't even dignify that ridiculous message with a response. I just forwarded the screenshot to Luna with a simple note. Your boyfriend's texting me now. Real classy. She called me immediately, crying and swearing that he wasn't her boyfriend and they'd never hooked up. She insisted he was just a mentor at work who was trying to help her navigate a difficult situation. But the damage was already done. If this guy felt comfortable enough to reach out to me, her husband, and lecture me about my own marriage, there was definitely something inappropriate going on between them. The divorce wasn't pretty, but it was absolutely necessary. I didn't stick around to watch the fallout or see how Luna's life imploded after I left. I moved out of our shared condo, got my own place across town, and focused entirely on rebuilding my life from scratch. I didn't date anyone for quite a while after the divorce was finalized. Not Jessica, not Ivy, not anyone else who'd been part of that whole mess. I needed time to process everything that had happened and figure out who I actually was outside of that toxic relationship. I'd spent so many years trying to make Luna happy and save our marriage that I'd lost touch with my own identity and what I actually wanted from life. I kept up with all the activities I'd gotten back into during our open marriage phase, the gym, rock climbing, socializing with friends, but not because I was trying to impress anyone or prove anything. I genuinely enjoyed these things, and they made me feel like myself again. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during my marriage, made some new ones through my hobbies, and started traveling a bit on weekend trips to places I'd always wanted to see. I started spending more time at this little coffee shop near my new apartment. Nothing fancy or trendy, just a quiet place where I could sit and think without distractions. After a while, the barista started noticing that I was coming in almost every other day, usually looking somewhat tired or stressed. One afternoon, while handing me my usual order, she smiled and said, "Rough week, I guess?" I must have looked worse than I thought, because that simple comment led to us talking for a bit. Nothing deep or personal at first, just casual conversation about work, hobbies, favorite books, the kind of small talk that usually feels forced, but somehow didn't with her. She joked that I was turning into a permanent piece of the furniture, and somehow it didn't feel like meaningless chatter. It felt easy and natural, like talking to someone I'd known for years instead of a stranger who happened to make my coffee. Over time, our interactions just naturally evolved into something more. Coffee conversations turned into longer discussions about life and goals. Those longer conversations eventually turned into grabbing dinner together after her shift ended. I wasn't actively looking for anything romantic or serious, but she made it incredibly hard not to notice how different things could be when someone actually gave a damn about what you had to say. She was grounded, honest, and refreshingly straightforward. She didn't play games or send mixed signals. She didn't need to explore anything or find herself through other people. She knew who she was and what she wanted. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I could just breathe and be myself around another person. Looking back on everything that happened, it's actually kind of funny how things worked out. Luna had spent so much energy and effort trying to find freedom and excitement by chasing people who barely looked twice at her. Meanwhile, without even trying or having any agenda, I found something real and meaningful just by living my life and being the kind of person I actually wanted to be. It's funny how life works sometimes. What started as Luna's attempt to get freedom from the constraints of our marriage became my own path to actual freedom. Freedom from constantly seeking her approval and validation. Freedom from questioning my own worth based on someone else's opinion. Freedom from a relationship that had become completely toxic and one-sided. If she hadn't pushed so hard for that open marriage, I might still be sitting in that cold condo, making dinner for someone who couldn't be bothered to look up from her phone long enough to acknowledge my existence. I might still be feeling like a ghost in my own life, wondering what I'd done wrong and how I could fix things. A while later, I ran into Jessica at a bar downtown. She was there with her husband, looking happy and drama-free, just enjoying a normal night out like a regular couple. We caught up for a few minutes, and she mentioned that Luna had moved to another state and was apparently still single, still searching for whatever it was she thought she was missing. I wished Luna well, and I meant it. No anger, no resentment, just quiet closure on that chapter of my life. As for me, life genuinely got better after all the dust settled. I still hit the gym regularly, still go rock climbing on weekends, still hang out at that coffee shop where I first started feeling human again. Sometimes the barista and I talk about future plans and what we want to build together, but there's no pressure or games involved. Just two people who actually mean it when they say they care about each other's happiness and well-being. Luna wanted freedom, and she definitely got it. So did I. The difference is that mine came with peace and genuine contentment instead of chaos and constant searching for something that was always just out of reach.